Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki S.H.A.P.E, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki S.H.A.P.E. Thank you so much for joining us today. Last episode, we had the great pleasure of having Mr. Mike Ringel on the show. If you did not get a chance to tune into that episode, please do. We had a wonderful conversation about financial strategies and ways that you can plan for your child's future. I appreciated the conversation so much, and thanks again, Mike, for being on the show. Today, I am especially excited to have Miss Kristin Lombardi on the show. Kristin is a powerhouse in special education and applied behavioral analysis with a mission to see every student succeed. As the founder and director of Zeal, she is driven by watching students excel in school, win on the sports field, and build the independence to fully participate in life. Kristin created Zeal to provide services for students often overlooked by traditional ABA, using a systematic approach to help them master everything from academics and job skills to college prep. With credentials including a master's degree in psychology, certifications as a special education teacher, and licenses as a board-certified and NYS licensed behavior analyst, she brings over 2 decades of experience to her work. She's also the co-author of a book called Spectrum of Independence, a book that extends her passion for building practical life skills. Let's get ready for a conversation that blends deep expertise with genuine love for helping others thrive. Please welcome Kristin Lombardi to the show. Kristin, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am too. From the moment we spoke, I was like, I can't wait to have you on the show. And, we'll kind of get into also a little bit about your book and your co-author, Kristin, that you helped publish that book with as well. But I knew right away that I value you guys. I value all of your expertise and knowledge just from that simple phone call that we initially had. So I knew this was going to be something that I wanted to do and have you on the show immediately.
Yes, we're both very excited for this.
I know. So excited. So I wanted to talk a little bit first about your private practice. What inspired the creation of your business, and what gap in autism support were you hoping to fill by starting this?
So prior to starting the business, I did early intervention and preschool services for a long time. But then I started doing in-network services through the insurance companies. And there was a few things happening. And one of the big ones was that they were requiring 10 plus hours a week of therapy.
Yeah.
And there are definitely kids who need that. And that's a wonderful thing to be able to have that avenue to get those services. But I had some cases at the time where either the child was like 2 turning 3 years old, was going to be going to a full-time special ed preschool, was going to lose their nap time, and the parents wanted services at home, but they knew realistically that their child was not going to handle 2 hours on top of being in school all day.
Right.
And when they went to ask for less services, they were being told no, it's like 10 or nothing.
Wow.
Similarly, there were students that sort of had less needs, right? They didn't need the 10 hours a week. They didn't have global delays. They had more what they refer to as a focus plan in ABA. So there were specific areas that they needed help on, like their social skills or building their independence. And I always like the students, if they can, to be out in the world doing stuff, either on a sports team or in an after-school club or whatever it is. And if you're doing those things, it's very hard to also be in therapy 10 hours a week. So what I was seeing is that these kids just weren't getting anything. So it was like you either needed a lot of help and you got the 10 plus hours, or even if you needed help, you weren't qualifying or being approved for anything. And they were slipping through the cracks because just because you don't need 10 hours a week doesn't mean that you're not in need of extra guidance.
Of something. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, so now the name Zeal kind of suggests a lot of passion and energy. I love the name. How does that show up in the work that you do with with families today?
Well, yes, the name zeal means an enthusiastic pursuit of a goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so many times when you're on this journey of raising a child that has special needs,
Yeah.
there's a lot of heavy moments, right? There's a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
stress. I had one parent say to me years ago, I'm okay until I go on social media and I see all the things that my friends' kids are doing,
Mm-hmm.
and then it hits me
Yeah.
because we're not living that life. And but what I realized is, in many cases, maybe not all cases, but in many cases, you can be on this path,
Mm-hmm.
still have a lot of successes,
Oh
and
yeah.
still enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
And so that was where the name came from. And within the practice, we really try to focus on what are the child's strengths, what is it that they love, what do we need to do to get them to be as independent as
Mm-hmm.
as possible, because that
Yeah.
makes not only them happier, it takes the load off the parents. There's a lot of benefits to all of
Right.
that.
Right. And I love the definition of it because I do think for me personally as a parent, it's a choice. I have to choose to kind of step into being that enthusiastic player, right? To work towards a goal for Drayson. And it really is a choice. Like every day I have to wake up and go, yes, I'm going to commit to this. Or yes, I'm going to, try to find more resources for Drayson or do more things for him because uh, if not, it's the other direction, right? And it, like you said, it's kind of this daunting path that you feel as a parent that you feel like it's isolating. You feel like you're on your own battle. You feel like you're waging your own war, so to speak. And it is hard because you do see your friends that have kids that are not on the spectrum, that are atypical and thriving. And that's not our life. That's, it's so accurate what you're saying. And I know a lot of families feel that way. So I love the name that you gave, for your business. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's a great definition and a very positive one too, because I think sometimes we start associating therapies. Sometimes it's not meant to be that way, but it does sometimes feel like it has a little bit of a negative connotation because you have to jump into doing those therapies, right? So there's a mindset that's attached to that. I really love that. Now, you use the acronym SH.A.P.E. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that acronym means? And can you walk us through a little bit about those values?
Yes. So I don't have the acronym in front of me, but I know that S is, I think I remember them.
Strengths.
S is strengths. Um,
I
and we,
have
and
it.
I'd like to focus on, I would like to focus on the strengths, right?
Uh-huh.
I've had people say to me, I'll talk to another professional and I'll say, oh, Johnny's great, X, Y, and
Mhm.
Z. And they'll say, oh, those are just like his interests, like he gets fixated on it. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know. He might be a great history teacher. Like if
Yeah.
that's what he loves, it's instead of poo-pooing it, what can we do to
Yeah.
sort of get him into an area where he could be using those strengths? H is honesty, and this is a big one.
This
I,
is a big one.
I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times I have spoken to parents, and I'll say to them, we're just going to use Johnny as like the catch-all kid for this, right?
Okay.
How is Johnny doing in school? Everything's great. The teacher telling me everything's great. I'm like, okay, well, Johnny's sitting in like a 612, like a self-contained class. It's a very high level support, or he's in a 10. Or what do we need to get out of that? I
Yeah.
don't ask the teacher how he's doing. I want you to ask the teacher, why isn't my child in the next level class? Why isn't he going from the 6 to the 10? Why isn't he going from the 10 to the inclusion? And I want the list of things that they're not doing, because that's what we need to work on. When you just say everything's great,
Yeah.
and it's not, right?
Right.
And where are we really going with that? So
Right.
I'm a big believer. We'll have session with students. And if they don't have a good session, like, mommy's going to know you didn't have a good session. It's not like everything was great. You know what? Everything wasn't great today. He wasn't paying attention today. Or I had assigned homework the last time I was here and the work's not done. Whatever it is, these are the things that we need to be working on and focusing on. So the next one is A, and that's attitude, I believe.
Yes, it is.
And okay. And
I feel like we're playing a game. I'm like, guess the next letter.
And attitude is, I mean, it feeds into what we were talking about before with the name of the company and deal. I think as a parent, on some level, you're shaping the journey, right? And obviously, the kid is bringing a lot to the journey as well, as far as their skill level, and some kids are just given a much harder hand than others as far as the amount of delays, that they're trying to overcome. But I think there are cases where the parent, you're either choosing to have that positive attitude, that negative attitude, and the kid is following suit. They're watching you. You're the one that's guiding the ship on some level. So that attitude is very important. And not only is the parent's attitude important, but the school district's attitude is important, or at whatever school your child's attending, because they're spending 30 hours a week there. So if you have a positive attitude, but the school's attitude is, well, we're just sort of counting down the days until graduation, we don't actually have any expectations for your child, that's not really moving the needle.
Right.
So it's very important that everybody have an attitude. I always tell parents, let's figure out what the goal is. Let's aim high. And then let's make sure that the school is aware that this is what the goal is, so that we are all moving towards this, whatever this high goal.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if we don't make it, we don't make it. But we're not going to make it if we're not even aiming for it.
Right. Right.
And then P is potential. And again, it goes in line with the rest of these. In order to reach, I think for anybody to reach their potential, right? You have to have the right attitude.
Yeah.
You have to have people backing you up and cheering you on. You got to play into your strengths, right? Nobody reaches their potential because you're forcing them into their weaknesses. Like, it doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah, right.
And you have to be honest with yourself too, right? For your potential. Sometimes parents will say to me, I want, do you think it's realistic, to aim for, like an inclusive higher education program? And I'm like, I said, yes. And they'll say, well, I don't know, nobody else thinks that this is realistic, or I don't know if it's realistic. And I always say to them, listen, I'm very honest. Like, if you came to me and you said, I'd like my child to go to law school at Princeton, I'd say, listen, let's regroup. Let's look at where we are right now. I don't know if, given everything we have going on, the place where we are right now, that's a realistic goal. But there's lots of things that I think are realistic goals. They just require a lot of work to get there.
Right.
And then E is expectation.
Yes. Yeah,
That's
you're right.
Last one. Okay,
It's expectations. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad I had all five of them.
You got them all right.
I got them all right. Expectation goes along with attitude. Like, you have to have high expectations. Again, I don't know if any child really does their best and reaches their full potential if nobody has expectations on them, because you're sending the message then as a parent, like, well, I don't think you're capable. So, like, I'm not going to put the time into having expectations. I'm not going to set the bar high. And what kind of message is that sending? But the minute you're like, hey, I am setting the bar up here because I do think you're capable, and I'm paying attention, I'm backing you up. That's where you start to see the movement. And again, the same thing goes with school, right?
Yeah.
If we're spending 30 hours a week, and I always say it's like 30 of our best hours because they get them first thing in the morning, right? Like, everything we're doing after school, we're getting them like 8 hours into their day.
Yeah, they're tired.
They're tired. Yeah. So if they need to have expectations also, and that's why I really encourage parents to like set the bar high, and then make sure the school realizes that this is what we're aiming for, because all of those expectations at school, all of the goals they have, all of that should be in line with reaching whatever this big end goal is going to be.
Right, right. And do you have clients, like I've done this with my care team, where I make sure that everyone's kind of communicating that information? Because one of the things I noticed with Drayson's school, was how disjointed it was, because it was like if the goals were different at school than what we were doing in home or outside of school, it would cause a lot of confusion for Drayson. So do you feel that it's beneficial for families to be able to have that open line of communication with their outside care team and the school so that the goals are aligning congruently and it's not confusing the child either? Is that something that you help to coordinate with your families, or is that
So
something that, yeah,
this gets tricky. So
yes,
it depends on how the services are set up, right? And if you're
yes,
going through insurance, for example, the goals have to be medically necessary, and they
correct,
don't want you overlapping with what's happening in school, right?
right. I
If
know,
you're
yeah,
going through the school districts,
yes,
the goals don't have to be medically necessary, but they need to be like educationally
educational, yep,
necessary. And again, there's all these different constraints depending on
yep,
where the services are coming, like who's funding the services, right? When they're private, that's when you can really do whatever you
right,
want, right?
differently,
But
yeah,
what I have found is, first of all, it varies by case. Because
mm-hmm,
most of the time when somebody's coming to me,
mm-hmm,
it's because everything is not okay. Like they are
yeah,
realizing that there are gaps, right?
yeah, there's
Even if their
something, yeah,
child's education, um, they don't always have the best relationship with the district, or sometimes they're on good terms, but like it's a fine line because they're starting to really advocate for
mm-hmm,
their child. Um, and I always tell parents I work really well with professionals, teachers, all of it, when they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
mm-hmm,
But when they're not, they can't answer my questions, and we end up having a problem real quick because
yeah,
they start to get nervous. I can't answer these. They're questions they should be able to answer, or I'm asking for data and we don't have the data. And so
yeah,
we have various setups on different cases depending on what's needed. Like I have a case where the speech teacher is the one who does the collaboration, with the school, and
mm-hmm,
I get the info from her.
right,
I have cases where we're working on daily living skills that aren't being covered in school.
school, mm-hmm,
Right. So it really
yeah,
does depend. But yes, you do want everybody working together, and you want to know whether it's school. I see this a lot too, even with private therapists. I'll have parents writing checks left and right for,
right,
private, private that, private speech, private OT. I said, do you have any idea what your child's doing in that therapy? And they're like,
yeah,
well, no. I said, it's a lot of money you don't have goals, you don't have progress
yeah,
updates, you don't have testing.
yeah,
You should know
you
if
should
you're
know, yeah,
yes, yeah, always.
yeah,
And just because it's private and ABA is so regulated that even if
mm-hmm,
it's private, like I have all these rules, right? There
right,
has to be a treatment plan, there needs to be goals, you need to take data, things need to be
yes,
updated, there needs to be standardized testing. In a lot of these other fields,
mm-hmm,
none of that is the case. So they
yeah,
can very well just come in and do a session and leave, and then come back and do a session and leave. And this can go on for months or years,
mm-hmm,
and nothing's being tracked. So it is
yeah,
very important that the parents know what is going on in each of the therapies, in school, all of it.
yeah,
And that
yeah,
everybody you want all the pieces to fit together, right? You want that
mm-hmm,
there's not some major gap. If I just
right,
started a new case recently and I said, let me speak to the different people that you have working with your child, and let me find out what they're doing, because I don't
right,
really know what they're doing. And let me make sure that what I'm doing is supplementing what they're doing, so
right,
that we don't have three people doing the same thing
right,
and six holes over here that nobody's filling.
yeah, which was kind of what started to happen with Drayson early on. So I immediately started trying to involve all of our providers at the same time, like even if it was a similar goal or something in the realm of what they were working on, that was what I was focusing on. Now that he's older, I do see it becoming a little bit more difficult because we're trying to focus on some more life skills and not so much on the academic skills. So now I'm seeing more of the divide as he gets older in terms of the goals being so different. But I did feel like initially in the beginning when he was younger, we could kind of align very similarly so that everyone was on the same page. But I'm, now that he's getting older and he's life skills are coming into play, it's not something that the school, where Drayson's at now, they incorporate life skills, but where he was previously, not so much. And so that was really difficult, I think, even for him at a young age as well. You describe parents as true partners. What does that partnership look like for you in your practice?
So there's a big difference, right, between having where you have therapists in your house 10, 15, 20 hours a week, right? Yeah. And the way that I work, which is these are kids who have more focus skills that they're working on. I'm maybe in there once or twice a week. Mm-hmm. And we also do family training. And I always tell the parents, if you don't want all of these hours, it's because you need to be following through with this throughout the week. And the bigger piece is especially when you're trying to increase your child's independence, whether it's with daily living skills, whether it's with socialization, whatever it is, you as the parent have to back off, right? If you're still making your child's social plans if they're 15, we got a problem because they should be making their own social plans, given depending again on the skill level, right?
Right.
And so same thing with waking up in the morning.
Yeah.
Choosing an outfit. You're still going in to wake up your kid for high school. Are we really on the path towards independence?
Right.
Get an alarm clock.
Yeah.
They should be making their own breakfasts. Teach them how to pick out an outfit. Yeah. Teach them if they don't know how to tell time, then set a timer of some sort, whether it's on a phone, whether it's an actual timer, and teach them that when the timer goes off, you need to wrap up whatever you're doing and go upstairs and take a shower. If they're waiting for you to tell them to go take a shower, we're not fostering independence. Right. And I tell parents all the time, if the plan is for your child to be independent, whether it's to go to inclusive higher ed, whether it's to get a job, whether it's to eventually live independently one day, you are not going with them. Mm-hmm. So if you are the sole reason they are getting things done, that is a problem. You are not going with them to college. You are not going to them with them to work. So let's figure out how to teach them to function without being so reliant on you.
Right. And that's so important. Like I said, those are things that we're starting to notice now too, that Drayson's getting older, like making sure he can, pick out his own outfits and do those own things and wake himself up in the morning. And it's funny because for a while I just was operating in that mode, and just because that's what I was used to. Yeah. And it was last spring, actually, just very recently, about 6 months ago. And I was like, why am I picking out his clothes? Like, he should be able to pick out his clothes. And then my husband laughs at me because, he comes out mismatched, right? And I'm like, me being the OCD person that I am, I'm like, it doesn't match. And he's like, just let him get dressed. And I'm like, you're right. I need to let that go, because I'm like, your shorts don't match your shirt. Like, I'm such a girl about it, and Pat, and my husband, Pat, was like, he got dressed. Like, he put clothes on and did it himself. It's a win. Like, take the win. So I think sometimes too, that reasonable expectation of what you're saying is, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, but he still got dressed. It's looking at the progress slowly. But he did come in the room the other day and he asked me if he wanted to know if his socks matched. He said, how do my socks look? Because he likes wearing really funny, eclectic socks. So he said, how do my socks look? And I'm like, they look great. They match your shorts. And it's such a nice ensemble. And so I think now he's starting to pick up now secondary, the detail of, well, I want to look nice, so it was just a few more steps than I thought it was going to be. But it was interesting to me that something as simple as that, it's like, yeah, he needs to know how to do that, because I'm not going to be able to tell him, or do this for him for his whole life. And I think that that's some things that are hard for parents. At least I know it's hard for me, because it's like, I enjoy being a mom. I enjoy doing those things for my kids. I like to do those things, but I also need to let that go so that they can learn those life skills. Because otherwise, he's going to live with me till he's 35, and that's not happening.
We talk about this. We talk about this a lot in the book when Christine and I are doing the podcast together. That when you have a neurotypical child, there are a lot of prompts that they give the parents to sort of back off, right?
Yes,
I have a 2.5-year-old here, and he's very much into like I got it. Let me do it myself. Now I have mornings where I'm like, oh my goodness, I have a meeting. We got to go. Let me just put your shoes on. We're going to be late. And so we have those moments, but he very much wants to be independent. A lot of times, neurodiverse kids, they don't always go through that. They're like, if you want to put my shoes, I've had students who are like, I'll sit here and wait 20 minutes for my mom to put my shoes on instead of doing it myself, even though I can do it myself,
Yeah.
The other thing is the social, what's the word? Sort of like the social pressure, that can be good and bad, right? And so a lot of kids stop picking their nose, for example, because they do it one day and some other kid says, ew, that's
gross.
disgusting, and they stop. If a neurodiverse kid does that, there are times where they think it's great that they even got a reaction. It's not negative to them. Same with Christine loves to use the showering examples where, a neurotypical kid, if they don't shower and they show up to school and they smell and people are like, you smell like I don't want to sit next to you, like that is a huge deal for them, and they'll correct that. But you could take somebody who's on the spectrum, for example, and like that's not registering, and so it puts that much more pressure on the parents to teach them these skills and how to internalize them and be responsible for them.
Right. Yeah. No, I would agree, because I think we have felt that in our household as well, but I think it's also learning. I always joke around. It's not Drayson just going through therapies and learning these skills differently, because he just learns differently, right? He still learns a lot of the same things that all the other kids do, just differently. And there's more steps involved. But what I didn't realize is the amount of, for me personally, training and understanding to look at things differently in order to help him. And so a lot of my pre-existing thoughts or beliefs, even values changed completely because of now working with him, and understanding his neurodivergency. And so I think a lot of times I talk to a lot of parents, across the country that listen to the podcast all the time. And I tell them, I'm like, you kind of have to take a step away. And it's almost like you have to prompt yourself before you start doing these things for your kids.
Yes.
And that was a really big learning curve for me, in the beginning. It was really difficult for me to shift that mindset. And I think that's a normal, natural human reaction anyway, but it was difficult,
Neurodiverse kids generally need to be parented differently because they see the world differently and they learn differently.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so I always tell parents that the way to parent a neurodiverse student is like not something that comes up like in general talk. Like you're at a cocktail party or hanging out with other parents. That's not what they're discussing. So it's not common sense. It seems like common sense when somebody says to you, hey, maybe try this instead of this.
Right.
But it's not your natural default to do that. And I've had parents where they have multiple kids and maybe some are neurotypical and some are neurodiverse, or they have multiple kids that are neurodiverse but in different ways. And I'm like, you need to parent these kids differently. Like even though they are both yours and you are all living in this house together.
Right.
They need different things from you and they need you to be a different parent.
Right. And I think that that's kind of what we ran into, because our oldest, he's grown and out of the house now, but my oldest son is a totally different type of parenting because he's there's no neurodivergency. He's an atypical kid. And so, and it's interesting dealing with our family members in the beginning. It was like, oh, well, just do this, or, oh, just discipline him that way, or, oh, and I'm like, it doesn't work like that for him. And also trying to get family to understand that was really difficult. Then they just thought we were appeasing him, or catering to him because he was just being a difficult child. That view came out even from some of our family members because it was like they just didn't understand. But you bring up such a good point that it needs to be approached differently. It's not, because they do learn differently. And I've learned differently now. So it's kind of expanded my mind now into being very open-minded about different things. When I'm approached about stuff, I feel like I'm much more open-minded because I know I might have to approach it differently with Drayson,
Right.
Well, and I want to, before we end the show today, I know that we're going to have you and your co-author Kristin back on the show to talk about spectrum of independence, but I do want to briefly bring it up. So could you tell us a little bit about, for our listeners today, a little bit about the first of, I think, is going to be many books for you guys.
We hope.
But about spectrum of independence, because I absolutely love the book. And for those of you guys listening today, you definitely need to check it out. But why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Spectrum of Independence and how you and your co-author, Kristin Drew, created this book?
So Kristin is sort of on the other side of all this, right? I work with kids from very little all the way up until they're finishing high school and moving on to be more independent. And Kristin's on the side where she's working at an inclusive higher education. So they're at that point need to have a certain level of independence. And we actually met at Auburn University at an inclusive higher ed conference. And then we saw each other again 6 months later at another inclusive higher ed conference in Syracuse. And we were having lunch. It's a big table. I was the only one that was from sort of that K to 12, age group, and everybody else there worked in inclusive higher ed. And the discussion was very much about how they needed the parents to back off more, that they couldn't believe that even with all of the, the application process and the interviewing, that these kids were showing up and they were so reliant on their parents on some level still. Mm-hmm. And I said, you guys have to back up a little bit and realize that in many cases, these kids are only making it to you. They've only made as much progress as they have made because the parents are so involved. Mm-hmm. And so it's a really tall order to basically say to a parent who has needed to be hyper involved all of these years, we don't want you in the picture right now. Just back off. Yeah. And that's a lot. I said, there's got to be a way to bridge this gap a little bit
more
smoothly and kindly. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the book came from. And this book that we ended up writing was not the book we had intended to write. Initially, our plan was to write a book prepping actually for college, for neurodiverse kids going to college. And it was just so much. There was just so much info where it was like nobody could put all this in a book. And two, one of Kristin's jobs at Auburn is to teach the relationship and sex ed class. And she's like, we definitely need a chapter, on this. And I say, Kristin, we got to back up. We got to back up. I got cases where the kid's not even remembering to shower themselves. I have cases, so many, where the kid's showering and then walking through the house naked to go get their clothes because they're not bringing their clothes with them to the bathroom. I'm like, we got to take care of that first. We're not up to relationship and sex ed yet. I said, and some of these parents are going to read that and flip out and be like, oh, my kid can't go to college. We had to really back it all the way up. And so this book was like the beginning. and not the way beginning. Obviously, if you have a child that doesn't have any sort of learning foundation, any of that, it's not, there are chapters talking about sort of the prereqs, like what you need as a parent to be ready, what your child needs to be ready. But it goes through, one, if your child can't brush their teeth, shower themselves, get dressed, etc. by themselves, this is how you prompt them, and this is how you fade the prompts instead of just doing it for them.
Right.
Let's take the verbal reminders out and the verbal cues out. Those are very hard to fade. Let's use the physical prompts and then fade them back. So that's first one is really on using task analysis. And to your point before, that a lot of times kids who are neurodiverse learn differently.
Yes.
We had a very interesting podcast it wasn't a podcast. It was somebody who did a book review for us who is on the spectrum. And she said this was really fascinating because you have a line talking about how neurotypical people view toothbrushing as like one task, and that it really is like 22 distinct tasks. She's like, I had no idea that neurotypical people would view toothbrushing as one task, because it's not. It's 22. And I was like, wow, so it really breaks these larger, complex tasks down that we view as isolated things into all of their components, so that parents can really find out, like, can your child really not brush their teeth, or can they just not get the toothpaste on the toothbrush?
Yeah.
Because we can figure out how to accommodate that piece, right? Can they really not shower, or do you just need to break it down for them so that they know exactly what they need to, to do?
Right. Yeah. And it's true, because they do, or at least Drayson, I shouldn't say they, Drayson, in my experience, like, he'll get hung up on the detail of one thing and then he can't function or can't complete it. So it literally, like, something as simple as brushing your teeth, breaking down into all those steps was very eye-opening for me when we went down that rabbit hole with Drayson, because I was like, okay, it's not that simple of, hey, go brush your teeth. And he was getting like massive anxiety, and I didn't understand why. And it was something like he couldn't put on the toothpaste or didn't know how to turn the toothbrush a certain way, and so it's like when you start observing those things, you go, oh, okay, well, that's fixable. We can, we can do that. And it becomes easier and easier and easier. And that has helped me. We're now entering teens, so I'm sure this is going to be a whole nother learning curve for me again as well. But at least I feel like I have that mindset to be able to know I might need to break it down a little bit differently or do something differently, and the ABA has definitely helped us tremendously as a family. Like, we've, putting some of these concepts to work, so this is, and I know we talked about that this was kind of the beginning of several, hopefully, volumes that you guys hope to produce with lots of different types of life skills, correct?
We're hoping. Yes, I mean, we have a whole thing mapped out of what we want to do. How it's going to all play out, we'll see. But what we had initially been hoping was that the next book would be on time management, choice making. We'll see. Right now, we're really focused on getting this book to do as well as it can. This was a huge learning curve for us, because we had never written a book before. So we've been learning a ton, and we're focusing on getting this to do as well as it can, so that will keep doors open for the next one.
Right. And now, if people want to purchase the book, can they find it on Amazon?
So yes, it's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Nobles, and it's on Guilford's site. There's a website for the book called spectrumofindependence.com.
Okay.
The first 3 podcasts that we did are already listed on there and live, so they can get links to those.
And that's on the Spectrum of Independence website, correct?
Yeah, and that website has links to, like, the Amazon and the Barnes and Nobles, all of that, to get the book. And there's also a free PDF, I think, when you go to the website, that explains, the whole idea of it being a spectrum of independence, it's not black and white. It's not like
Right.
either you're independent or you're not, right? There's
Right.
different levels of independence. So
Yes.
being able to physically go through the showering process is one level.
Right.
Being able to take a shower sort of on a routine, is another level. Like at 7:00, I'm supposed to take a shower. Knowing that, like, hey, I just was at the beach for 2 hours and I'm really dirty, I should probably take a shower. It's like a third level.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So there's a
you're
lot of charts in there.
moving into, which is great because you're kind of moving into more of that conceptualization of those things as you're working along the same goal, basically, which is awesome.
Right.
Well, and I love the book. Like I said, I've told you several times already, I really love the book. So for our listeners today, please check out the book, Spectrum of Independence. I will post all of the information also in the show notes so that anybody is interested in purchasing the book or also getting a hold of Kristin. All that information will be available in the show notes as well. Kristin, thank you so much for being on today. I greatly appreciate your time and your expertise, and I always enjoy having conversation with you. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this concludes our episode for today. If you have questions, comments, or even a show topic that you would like to hear about, please feel free to send me an email at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. Don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram if you have not done so already, or feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you like what you're hearing, please spread the word so that we can continue to empower autism families, and feel free to give us a good rating on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, keep working on your puzzle, and remember, you don't have to have it all solved in a day. Take care.